He wants Social Security for everybody. And this is a quote. As much as unemployment blows, so do jobs. What if people didn't have to work to survive? Is this a joke?
No, I mean, it isn't. This is actually how a lot of millennials think, and this is how the Occupy Wall Street movement thinks. This is a group of people who graduated with degrees in lesbian dance theory and then were surprised when they didn't get a six-figure paycheck out of college.
Ben, I want to start with you. Is it your impression that in the court of public opinion that Israel has somehow taken more of a hit during these 27 days than Hamas has?
There's no question. I mean, Hamas is a terrorist group, and people going in understood Hamas to be a terrorist group. Israel, thanks to outlets like CNN, has been turned into the villain in this particular scenario, and a moral equivalency has been drawn between the two groups. If Hamas could have come up with any sort of outlet that could have created a will to kill more Jewish babies and Palestinian babies, CNN would have been it. And if there's anybody who's emboldening Hamas to kill more children, it is you, because it is your policies which have emboldened Hamas. They know that people like you are going to get on American television and talk about how the Palestinians are meek victims, and whenever they fire rockets, it can be justified by Israeli policy. Hamas celebrates every moment you're on television, Peter.
Hi, Ben. My name is Matthew, and I go to a school, Catholic private school that is full of leftist, statist punks, and I hate them. And my...
It's like an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting.
Yeah. It's an oxymoron, I tell you. So in the very rare case where a leftist uses evidence, logic, and empiricism, how do I combat, like, statistics they propose?
Who is it and when has it happened ever? I do think, Piers, I have to say, I think the reason that there are so many folks who are talking about the possibility of government tyranny is threefold, really. It's the Obama administration's increasing reliance on big government, and that I think threatens some people. I think that it is folks like Alex Jones who do this routine where every time they shut down a city like Boston because of a terrorist attack, it's the end of the world and military laws at hand. And honestly, I think part of it is due to folks like you, Piers, because, you know, you go out of your way to really give the impression that you're interested in taking away people's fundamental right to bear arms, and I think that scares a lot of folks.
Well, no, I'm not. We've discussed this. I'm not remotely against people having the right to bear arms. I'm seriously against the right to have military-style assault weapons to blow kids' brains to pieces in schools.
I still don't understand your position on this, because you've said you're against assault weapons, but you are okay with handguns. Handguns kill 6,000 people a year. Assault weapons kill 300.
Well, they're both a big problem.
So
handguns
why don't we just go for the,
and assault weapons with mass shootings.
You're from the UK. Why don't we just go with a full gun ban?
Well, listen, we've discussed this. The UK has 40, 50 gun murders a year.
Right. So why don't
America has 12,000. Why don't we try our way? Let's move on to this. Jason,
I'm glad you finally got your agenda out there. So here's my message to the bloviating jackasses outside. Toughen up, you spoiled brat snowflakes, if you actually want a better world. As far as the notion that climate change is more important than terrorism or the economy or any of this other stuff, like, you know, this is Paul Krugman wrote a column yesterday saying exactly this. He said, Paris is bad, but we should really keep our eye on the ball, climate change. And I mean, you have to be highly educated to be this stupid. The baby is not part of your body. The baby is a baby. Really, my wife is pregnant right now, and she's 30 weeks pregnant. Yeah. 32. That baby is kicking the living crap out of her. Okay, that is a living human being in there. Okay, and I promise you that it is not a bundle of cells. Okay? I can guarantee you it's not a bundle of cells, because that is a baby. Okay, and I'm sorry, but you're technically a bundle of cells right now. Turn down for what? mainstreaming delusion?
It's not delusion.
Why would you call it delusion?
Because Bruce Caitlyn Jenner, I'll call him Caitlyn Jenner.
No,
because
it's
that's
her. You're not being polite to the pronouns.
Because
disrespectful.
Okay, forget about the disrespect. Facts don't care about your feelings.
On guns, my next guest has strong words for me. He says I'm off the rails on guns in America. Ben Shapiro is editor-at-large at Breitbart.com and the author of Bullies, How the Left's Culture of Fear and Intimidation Silences Americans. So why am I off the rails, Mr. Shapiro?
You know, honestly, Piers, you've kind of been a bully on this issue because what you do, and I've seen it repeatedly on your show, I watch your show, and I've seen it repeatedly, what you tend to do is you tend to demonize people who differ from you politically by standing on the graves of the children of Sandy Hook, saying they don't seem to care enough about the dead kids. If they cared more about the dead kids, they would agree with you on policy. I think we can have a rational political conversation about balancing rights and risks and rewards of all of these different policies, but I don't think that what we need to do is demonize people on the other side as being unfeeling about what happened in Sandy Hook.
How dare you accuse me of standing on the graves of the children that died there? How dare you?
I've seen you do it repeatedly, Piers.
Like I say, how dare you?
I mean, you can keep saying that, but you've done it repeatedly.
In your video where you debunk white privilege, you talk about how white privilege is a made-up term by privileged minorities. So I was wondering if you can elaborate on some of the privileges that you think minority groups have.
Okay, so in privileges in the law, so when I say privilege, I'm actually going to talk about legal standing. Okay, so affirmative action is a privilege. Affirmative action is a privilege. Subprime mortgages designed to appeal to minority recipients without proper qualifications, that is a privilege. Now, those are a couple examples of privilege. Privilege would also be the police being told that they can't police in communities the same way they would in other communities because they don't understand the problems of minority communities. That's a privilege. And by the way, these privileges are not helpful, but these are, as an overall matter, but it is certainly it's very difficult for me to see how it's not a privilege to get a lower score on the SAT than the Asian guy who's living in exactly the same circumstance. He gets penalized 50 points, you get 230 points on the SATs. That is definitionally a privilege. So there's one. Do you disagree?
Yeah, but I don't want to take up everyone's time, so I'm just going to let.
No. The reason I say no, I'd be happy to let people win if they're not screaming. The reason I say no is because it's a fire hazard, and the last time people tried to create a fire hazard, they pulled the fire alarm in the middle of the lecture.
Don't give them ideas.
And I know they don't have many of their own.
X gon' deliver to you. Knock, knock, open up the door, it's real. With the non-stop pop.
There is only one thing that could make me say or do anything pro-Trump, and that is all of the precious snowflakes who find it so offensive that people write chalk messages on the ground. They have to whine and cry about it on a national level. So, in the name of free speech,
Damn, it feels good to be a gangster. A real gangster type player plays his cards right. A real gangster type player never runs his mouth, cause real gangsterized players don't start fights. And brothers always got a high cap, showing all his boys how we shot him. But real gangster type players don't flex.
quick note to all the folks in the crowd who disagree. I hope that nobody walks out. I hope that nobody shouts down, because this is a free country, and I'm hoping to have a fun conversation with everybody walking out. Walking out just demonstrates closed-mindedness. So, if the left, oh, there we go. Well, wait, because I know there are a bunch of other people who want to come in. So if people want to come in, again, I operate under the assumption that in in a safe space, which is called America, free speech should be allowed to flourish. So if other people want to come in, we'll wait for them to come see us. What was that?
I thought you were going to say safe space.
I am. It's called irony.
Move, bitch, get out the way. Get out the way, bitch, get out the way. Move, bitch.
The thing I hate the most from the right is this constant refrain. Yeah, socialism, it's a great idea if only it worked. It's not true. It's an unbelievably morally shitty idea. It's a terrible idea. Socialism... The reason is this. The basic premise of socialism is, I'm here, I'm breathing, give me crap. Right? You have an obligation to care for me. I have a right to health care. I can force that doctor to go to medical school, expend $200,000, spend her entire life learning medicine, and then I can walk into her house and force her to provide me medicine. Right? That's nonsense. It's immoral. Right? You don't have a right to somebody else's labor. That's called slavery or indentured servitude, and it was ruled out in the 13th Amendment for good reason. Right? The left's perspective is I have a right to housing. From whom? From me? I'm not going to build you a house. You don't have a right to demand a house from me. Go out and work for your house. Right? Capitalism, by nature, is the opposite. Capitalism is the idea that I will starve unless I give you a good or a service that you want. Right? If I don't give you something that you want, I'm not going to eat tonight. It's forced altruism, effectively. Right? We have to have a trade. We have to come to some sort of consensus. I have to give you something cool, and you have to give me something cool. Right? It's great. Socialism is rape. And capitalism is consensual sex.
Damn, it feels good to be a gangster. A real gangster type player.
My wife is pregnant right now. She's due at the end of May. And that I'm feeling that we don't have to blood. It's a lot of fun.
This is how I roll. Animal print pants out control. It's Red Bull with the big ass bra. And like Bruce Lee, I got the clout. Yeah. Girl, look at that body. Girl, look at that body.
I'm trying to decriminalize weed here in Pennsylvania and State College. I want to know what your opinion is. Weed, yay or nay?
So decriminalization of weed, yay, weed, nay. Okay, meaning that I'm libertarian when it comes to weed. I will also say that the no.
I'm not gonna attack you, bro. I'm not gonna attack you.
I didn't think you were going to. You're high.
Smoke weed every day.
Gotcha, bitch.
Thank you. Thank God. It was a Zika virus, a mosquito, wasn't it? Thank you, Ben. Thank you for killing the mosquito with the Zika virus in it. Thank you. Thank you. Whew. There was a mosquito on my head, right?
What are you talking about?
Damn, it feels good to be a gangster. A real gangster type player plays his cards right. A real gangster type player never...
So you spoke a little bit about decisions, which, yeah, especially in college, we understand the difference of decision making. My question is, you were raised in Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm.
Where did you grow up in Los Angeles?
Burbank in North Hollywood.
Okay. And what high school did you graduate from?
I went to a private high school.
It
was called Yeshiva University of Los Angeles, private Jewish high school.
Do you know the demographics of that high school?
Upper class. And wholly Jewish. It was a Jewish high school.
91% white, I believe, if not higher.
It's not, I mean, just statistically, it's not possible for it to be 100% or higher. But beyond that, Jews are not all white, just so you know. In fact, half of Jews are Middle Eastern.
I'm not saying that it's 91%. I'm not talking about whether the Jews or not.
I'm married to a non-white Jew.
Okay.
Right, she's Moroccan.
So...
Gotcha, bitch.
And you went to a couple different colleges?
Mm-hmm. Well, I went to one, and then I went to law school, yeah.
Did you have to work in high school?
Did I have a job in high school? No.
Okay.
No.
And did you put yourself through college?
Yes.
Fully?
I paid my own way in college.
Good for you.
Is this going anywhere, or at the end you bring out my family and this is where is your life? My parents made a lot of very good decisions to give me a better life. I hope to make very good decisions to give my child a better life. I hope that you would personally make very good decisions to give yourself a very good life. Would you? Well, this question has now gone on longer than speech, so if you would like to get to the question mark, I'd be happy.
Sorry, you kind of interrupted me, so I'm trying to remember so I can say it clearly so you can understand what I'm trying to ask.
We're still here. Go ahead. Well, then it wasn't worth mine.
Move, bitch, get out the way. Get out the way, bitch, get out the way. Move, bitch.
Well, the fact is that workers everywhere in the nation need a higher minimum wage, and workers everywhere are inspired by what's happened so far in Seattle, and all eyes are in Seattle, are on Seattle. Workers everywhere are feeling empowered by how much workers in Seattle are fighting for their rights. So it has nothing to do with Seattle's zip code. We need this to happen everywhere, but what's wrong with starting with Seattle?
It's true. You might say that workers of the world, for lack of a better word, are uniting. You know, as far as the
It's easy to make facetious comments. It's very hard to dispute data.
Well, since you provided no data in that actual answer, it's not that difficult.
Move, bitch, get out the way. Get out the way, bitch, get out the way. Move, bitch.
I hope that you and the media continue to do this. The more you do this, the more you discredit yourselves, and the more people in the Republican field get to attack the media, which frankly I enjoy much more.
I'm a member of the media, a member of which you are, Ben. Let's also just point out you are also a member of the so-called media here, but
not the mainstream media. I'm an opinion journalist on the right. I'm very clear about my agenda. You aren't.
X gon' give it to you. Wait for you to get it on your own. X gon' deliver to you. Knock, knock, open up the door.
Without the British accent, by the way, Milo is basically just another ill-informed libertarian.
All right,
Milo.
He's definitely gonna see this. So.
I know.
With me, nigga, come and get me. Come and get me.
If we can just trust the government, then why aren't we just trusting the government to do the right thing now? I don't understand why a piece of legislation makes them better at what they do. I mean, the government is not very good at what they're doing now. Why does new wording make them not suck?
Because part of the reason... Part of the reason you have a law or initiative as a deterrent, that the government won't even be involved, that the bad guys won't be going to gun shows to buy guns, so they have to circumvent it.
Well, but that's exactly the point. If bad guys are not going to gun shows with regard to Ebola, and for a second, this is a mild digression. With regard to Ebola, the federal government just made the case that they don't want a federal travel ban, right? Because they said if there's a federal travel ban, people will just find a way to circumvent the federal travel ban. Okay, do you see the analogy here?
Al Sharpton, say hello to Ben Shapiro.
Hello, good morning, Ben.
Hi, how are you?
Fine.
Have you guys ever met or spoken before?
No, I haven't, and I'd like to just ask Mr. Sharpton exactly why he's not paying for the Swan and Browley case, and also why he incited riots against Jews in Crown Heights.
I don't think that killing babies is the solution to you making bad sexual decisions.
If you're going to say mothers are forced to be parents, should you then also incite like laws or something like that, since you're going to force these women to be parents, that will men be fathers?
Well,
and
there already are. It's called paternity
they're
tests.
not fathers, so should they walk out and use their kids, and then you have this as incite?
Yes, absolutely. I'm in favor of that. It's called marriage, and the left undermined it. It was awesome. America is the greatest movement women of all time, and then feminism came along and said women need men like fish need a bicycle, and it turns out that women need men like women need men. I'm also a local talk show host on 870 in the morning, and I got out of bed and left my 1-month-old baby there when I saw what was going on here tonight. I've never been more ashamed to be a Bruin. I've never been more ashamed to be an alumnus of this university than to see this divestment petition being considered at this level. To pretend that this is about occupation, to pretend this is about peace, to pretend this is about anything but vile and despicable Jew hatred is a lie. There's There's only one reason that we are discussing Israel and not discussing Saudi Arabia. There's only one reason we are discussing Israel and not discussing Iran. There's only one reason we are discussing Israel and not discussing Palestine. There's only one reason we are discussing Israel and not discussing the vast bevy of human rights violations that happen every day in the Middle East, exponentially worse than what happens in Israel. Exponentially worse than what happens every day in Israel. Any gay or lesbian in this room who is targeting Israel for divestment seems to have forgotten how high they hang gays from cranes in Iran. Every person of liberal bent who suggests that Israel is the problem in the Middle East seems to have forgotten that there is only one country in the Middle East that actually has any sort of religious diversity in it. The countries that are apartheid countries are those that are Judenrein, like, for example, Palestine. So for us to sit here and pretend that Israel is somehow on a lower moral plane is a direct manifestation of anti-Semitism. To hold Jews to a different than any other country, any other group on the face of the earth represents nothing but an age-old and historic hatred for the Jewish people. And all the folks here who are pretending that BDS is about anything other than that, I would like to see a poll of those folks and see how many of them actually believe in the existence of a Jewish state, quad-Jewish state. Not as a state like any other, but as a Jewish state. They don't acknowledge that existence, they don't believe in that existence, they don't believe in peace. All this is about, pure and simple, is a desire to target the Jewish people.
Living the life that is diamonds and guns. There's numerous ways you could choose to earn funds. Some get shot, locked down, and turn nuns. Cowardly hearts and straight up shook ones.
When you look at what they're actually teaching here, what's really disturbing about it, obviously, is the kind of mentality that's being taught, the repeat after me, please chant after me, this kind of Orwellian groupthink. Right before the trust falls and before the organic paintball fighting, we have to push the idea that certain races are more racist than others, that the Pilgrims were illegal aliens. Last I checked, there wasn't great border security back in those days, and there wasn't actually a governing government in the United States in those days. But the bottom line that they're trying to push at the USDA is this idea that certain races are deserving of special scrutiny, more scrutiny than other races. This ties back into the USDA's consistent focus on the idea that there has been tremendous systematic racism inside the USDA. That was true a couple decades ago. It's not true now. There have been settlements that have been moved toward this, but the idea that you're going to hire somebody for a couple $100,000 to come in here with the cushiest job in the universe, I mean diversity training, what exactly is your training require to become that? I want on that gravy train.
Shit, my gangster been solidified. Still do my business on the side. Bitch, if you police then pay me, no, never mind.
I'd really like to hear your policy prescriptions for what we should do about guns. Because you say that you respect the Second Amendment, and, you know, I brought this here for you so that you can read it. It's the Constitution.
Come in, you brandish your little book as if I don't know
My little book, that's the Constitution of the United States.
And I think that there's a lot of evidence that institutional racism exists and that it manifests itself in very real and negative and harmful ways.
As far as the institutional racism, all I would ask you to consider, you can believe what you want, but I would ask you to consider this. Shouting institutional racism does not actually combat racism. Gotcha, you have to find individual instances, and you have to show me who the racists are so that we can fight them together. I hate racism. I think it's evil. But if you're just going to say institutional racism every time something bad happens, there's no way to fight it. I need a policy that you're proposing, or I need a person who's actually racist so that we can fight it together, or we can determine whether the policy is good. What I find really problematic is the virtue signaling that I see by so many people on the other side, which is, I don't have to give you the racist, I don't have to tell you who he is or what measures I'm proposing. I just say institutional racism, everybody cheers for me because that's an approved point of view, and now we move on with our lives. You haven't helped anybody, you've just made yourself feel better. Have her respond, please.
Well, I think that institutional racism in and of itself, first of all, I would say that the majority of the people that do bring up institutional racism do also have solutions as to how to combat it. But
Which invariably involve encroaching on other people's liberty.
I would just say that there is kind of, again, I feel like you're painting a wide and diverse group of people with the same brush and saying that if you can't point to a policy or if you can't point to a person, then you're just wasting everyone's time. And I think that a lot of people are trying to point to policies, and while I think that the idea of pointing to a racist person is fundamentally in contrast with the idea of institutional racism, because institutional racism grapples with implicit bias in the society as a whole, or not like a ghost in the machine, but in individuals.
Unless you're connecting that to a policy, it's a cop-out. Because now we're ghost hunting again. If you just said to me, we have a problem in American society, income inequality, right, is a problem in American society. If you just gave me any problem, and I said, well, that's the Bilderberg's fault, right? That's the fault of the Bilderbergs, right? It's a conspiracy. It's the fault of the Bilderbergs, right? There are all these conspiracy theories about the Bilderberg group. Now, let's say that it's the Bilderberg's fault, or it's the Protocols of the Elders of Zion. It's whatever it is. There's some conspiracy out there. You would say to me, that's not useful because what are you even talking about? When you say institutional racism, it's too broad. You at least have to name me the institution. Which one is the racist one? Which institution is racist? Tell me which, so we can fight it, seriously, so we can fight it together. Just shouting slogans like institutional racism it's not effective. Shouting white privilege is not effective. I want to be on your side. I do. I want to fight racists. I think racist behavior is evil. I want to fight it with you, but I can't fight it if you're not showing me what it is. And we have to decide together if the policies you're proposing will alleviate racism or exacerbate racism. And it turns out, I think that a lot of the policies proposed by the left, I think institutional racism is usually a lever for proposing a policy that is actually unpalatable to freedom, and then castigating people on the other side of that policy as being in league with the institutional racism. The policies are good or bad without regard to words like institutional racism, is what I'm saying. Honestly, I'd love to sit down and talk with you for an hour about it because it's a worthwhile conversation, and I think we could actually get somewhere with it. But I think that slogans generally tend not to be particularly effective in getting us to solutions.
Thank you.
Can't be touched, can't be stopped, can't be moved, can't be rocked, can't be shook.
I mean, I do think that the media has been holding back, but I think this is a reality TV show that's far beyond what they can control at this point. I mean, today's Ryan-Trump meeting was basically The Bachelor with Reince Priebus playing Chris Harrison, and the only question was whether Ryan was going to give Trump a rose or whether he was going to offer him a night in the fantasy suite. I mean, this whole thing is so far beyond the realm of natural politics that I'm not sure the media can control it. I mean, what do they hit him with at this point? He's done everything publicly. He's been in every scandal imaginable. Unless you catch him with a horse or something, I'm not sure exactly what damages him. How about the Black Lives Matter movement's contention that when police do come into contact with black folks, they treat them with more violence? Well, that's nonsense too. There's a study that just came out from John Jay College, Professor Peter Moskos, and what he found is that in situations where the police were confronted with force by whites and blacks, the white people were shot significantly more often than the black folks. As early as 1994, I'm sorry, they're called statistics, and they're useful. You should use them. As early as 1994, the Department of Justice...
Where the hood at? Had a nigga in the cut where the wood at. All the niggas acting up where the wolves at. You better bust that if you don't pull that.
Honestly, I have one question in all of this. Seriously, just one question. Why not just secure the border and then put a pathway to citizenship in?
Why can't those happen at the same time?
Why don't you answer my question instead of asking me back why? I just explained to you why they can't. Here's why they can't happen at the same time. As you secure the border remains somewhat open. People cross the border because they feel that if they get in before the deadline, if they get in before the border is secure, then they are somehow included in the pathway to citizenship. Of course I've read the bill. And not only have I read the bill, I've been watching what's happening on the border with tens of thousands of children crossing the border in anticipation of amnesty.
Wait, because we have
what do you think is happening?
There's no law right now. But in the Senate
no
bill,
law right
we
now.
talk about
You're right, there's no law against crossing the border illegally.
In the Senate bill, we talk about who qualifies for a pathway to citizenship, and those deadlines do not apply to those individuals that cross the border.
And how are you going to magically determine that, Richard? Do they have a magical
It's in the bill.
Right, they have a.
Read the bill.
I've read the bill, Richard. Can you explain to me when you
haven't read it correctly.
when you determine who has crossed the border when? I was unaware that everybody who crosses the border has a barcode saying when they came across.
You know.
Well, the problem is twofold here. One is what's actually being taught in certain ethnic studies classes, which tends to be on a myopic focus on the idea that America is a racist place against certain ethnicities and minorities. The second point here is just the giant waste of taxpayer dollars that this constitutes. Look, I took Jewish studies courses when I was at UCLA. There are only two reasons that you take a Jewish studies course. The first is to meet girls, and the second is to get an easy A.
Animal print pants out control. It's Red Bull with the big ass bra, and like Bruce Lee, I got the clout. Yeah. Girl, look at that body. Girl, look at that.
Okay, time for some things that I like and some things that I don't like. Okay, so things that I like. Somebody emailed me and made me aware of this channel on YouTube called Ben Shapiro Thug Life. And I have to admit, I laughed really hard when I saw this. This is a clip of me. I'm trying to remember which school this was. I think this is Virginia Tech, I think. I was speaking at Virginia Tech, and I was confronted by someone who disagreed, and you'll see how it goes. And I'll describe it to you if you don't subscribe. But again, subscribe, folks, so that you'll get the joke. It's very difficult for me to see how it's not a privilege to get a lower score on the SAT than the Asian guy who's living in exactly the same circumstance. He gets penalized 50 points. You get 230 points on the SATs. That is definitionally a privilege. So there's one. Do you disagree?
Yeah, but I don't want to take up everyone's time, so I'm just going to let.
So here's my message to the bloviating jackasses outside. Toughen up, you spoiled brat snowflakes, if you actually want a better world. I don't think that killing babies is the solution to you making bad sexual decisions.
If you're going to say mothers are forced to be parents, should you then also incite like laws or something like that, since you're going to force these women to be parents, that will men to be fathers?
Well,
and
there already are. It's called paternity
they're
tests.
not fathers, because they walk out and leave their kids, and then you have this as we say.
Yes, absolutely. I'm in favor of that. It's called marriage, and the left undermined it. It was awesome. Okay, so folks, you can't see these things. Basically, the system of marriage was the greatest boon to women of all time. And then feminism came along and said that women need men like fish need a bicycle. And it turns out that women need men like women need men. Okay, so somebody took all of these clips of doing stuff. The reason you're hearing this obnoxious kind of rap track underneath, folks, if you're listening, is because somebody took these clips of me and then they did like a freeze frame of me and they put a blunt in my mouth and like a gold chain around my neck, and then it says Thug Life. So I find this humorous. That's all I can say. Whoever's doing this, well done. I think it's very funny, considering that I have never smoked pot, number one, and number two, I wouldn't know a rap song if it came up and bit me on the ass. So there's that. Okay.
My nigga.
Ben Shapiro, Thug Life. You spend most of your day ripping on how John Kasich eats pancakes while you dust your face with Cheetos before you do TV appearances. Ben Shapiro, Thug Life. President Obama buys into it right away, no questions asked, invites kids to the White House, and then it got a little bit awkward tonight. It was unclear whether the president was going to meet with him. He sort of met with him very briefly, didn't really meet, took a photo with him in passing, and that was a bit of a downgrade from the big event, the star-studded event that we expected between the president and Ahmed Mohammed, where the president was going to knight him, give him the Order of Merit, and also declare him the greatest scientist since Isaac Newton.
Turn down for weed. Smoke weed.